All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining the homelessness group. We so appreciate your time for this important topic. Again, I'm Kristen Toombs. I'm the director of the Office of Homeless Initiatives at the Department of Local Affairs, Division of Housing. I'm joined by Melissa Nierensen, Zach Schaffner, and I think there are a few other Dolomites or Ohires here. We are very excited to hear from you what questions or input you might have. We had some good questions come up in the last group, and I'm just looking at the names to see if I see anybody who was here before. I think what I will do, well, the two main questions that I think came up, I can share, but I also don't want to steer this conversation towards those. So if anybody has some burning questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. The other thing for you to know is the reason we're recording this is so that we can make sure we track it all, so that we can remember and come back and really make sure we capture your input, and that informs us as we develop Prop 123 and implement it. So that's why we are not going to do intros, because that would take up the time. But when you speak, can you please just say your name and your affiliation, so that folks have a sense for who you are and where you're coming from. So I'll first open it up. Melissa or Zach, is there anything you think I'm missing? Okay. Any burning comments or questions about this, the homelessness related funds of Prop 123 and what Melissa and I shared a few minutes ago?
Please.
You can raise your hand or just come off mute. Go ahead.
This is Karen Garrity in Golden, and we just had a meeting yesterday with our homelessness support group, and it's a lot of nonprofits and faith-based organizations. And the question came up, and I thought I knew the answer, but I just want to make sure I said the right thing.
Okay.
Because what they asked is, as long as our city, makes the commitment, we're approved, then they can apply as their own entities without officially partnering with the city and the city taking the lead. I said, oh yeah, my understanding is you can. Is that correct?
That is our understanding as well. It does not need to be the local government who is the applicant or co-applicant or lead. So yes, Karen, I think you said that right. And I appreciate you double checking. And I think that's an important thing to highlight that came up as a topic or question in the last breakout group, was just confirming, yes, the way that Prop 123 is written is that the local government must commit to the 3% in order for an entity, a nonprofit provider, or that local government to apply to the Division of Housing for the homeless related funds or any of the Prop 123 funds. But it does relate to these funds as well. So appreciate you mentioning that. Another point that came up in the last meeting was, well, as a local government, I'd really like to know who's applying. As for any of you who are familiar with some of our other recent notice of funding availabilities or requests for applications, we have been asking for other letters of support, or for you to articulate how this fits with your local homelessness response. And so feedback we got from the last group was that seems to be helpful. It helps everybody be aware of what's happening, and it helps foster that conversation and coordination. But curious from you all if you would agree or other thoughts around that. But the vision we would have is not that the state needs, or I'm sorry, the local government must be the applicant or must approve, but we do want to see some coordination around homelessness response in that region in some way. And that could be in the form of letters of support. We have not finalized that yet, but I just use that as an example because it was asked, and that's what we've used recently for other opportunities. Karen, does that help answer your question? I don't know if you have a follow-up to that. Okay.
No, that definitely does. I did have one other question about the eviction funds that are now available, but then you're running out. So is it likely that those that come July 1st, if a city has been approved and has made the commitment, that it could be as early as this summer that a city could, a city or a nonprofit in that city could apply for an extension of those funds or more of those funds?
So what we have right now is the emergency rental assistance program that was really pandemic relief. We are at the end of that program. We have closed down our portal, but we are still assisting folks statewide if they are facing an eviction, so long as they have not received funds from this bucket of funds in the last 12 months. So in the, a long-term program, the emergency rental assistance program, it was able to fund folks for up to 18 months. So it was a very long, quite robust program. We don't anticipate that anything that we do from Prop 123, there's no way that the funding that we receive from 123 could support this program that we've had previously. So we will have to shrink that down, but we do anticipate that there are going to be some municipalities or nonprofits within throughout the state that are going to apply for something similar to this. And so right now we are still using the emergency rental assistance program. So if you do have folks within your community that are facing eviction now, they absolutely may be eligible for help under what we have. We just are not accepting new applications for those folks that are not at imminent risk of housing instability.
Thank you. I have one other follow-up question. I'm sorry, but we just had a meeting yesterday, so I wrote them all down.
I don't see other hands up at this time, so go for it, Karen.
Yeah. So my other question is, are any of the Prop 123 funds, especially for this program, going to require matching funds?
Fantastic question. Don't think there's an answer for that at this time. Melissa, I don't think there is at this time.
Yeah, I don't think it's specifically outlined. So great question.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will say to remind folks that also it's estimated to be 26 million this first year. That's probably not going to fund 100% of any program. So inevitably, probably you all will have some sort of match, you know what I, but to your point, Karen, is there a requirement? We have not fleshed that out at this point. Great. Thank you for those questions. I love that you all are already meeting and coordinating. That's beautiful. Anybody have other comments or questions?
Go ahead, Kristen.
I was going to share something to help elicit some questions, but go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So one of the questions that came up with the last group was around, many folks have already applied to Division of Housing through our current funding opportunities, most notably the transformational notices of funding availability, the transformational affordable housing, and the transformational homelessness response NOFAs that are funded through our American Rescue Plan Act, and that were passed down to us through House Bill 22-1304 and House Bill 22-1377. If you're not aware of those are on our open RFA link, as are other funding opportunities. But the question was, many folks have applied to that. For example, between those two NOFAs, we have 243 million that we can award out. We got over 640 million in ask. So one of the questions was, hey, could we somehow use these Prop 123 funds for those that are already underway? And my response was, excellent question. What do you all think? That is something we're looking at, but curious your thoughts. Two things to flag for you is some of the differences are the ARPA funds must have a timeline of 2026. These are ongoing funds. These funds, Prop 123, require the local government to be committed to that 3%, or you can't access it. ARPA does not have that. So there are some differences here. And would those make differences in what gets requested in either direction if we were to in some way combine? At the same time, we know that we and you all have put in a lot of work already, and that you're busy and strapped, and we do not want to have death by applications either. So curious, we genuinely do not have an answer to this. And I appreciated the person asking that question and would love to hear from you all if you have any strong feelings or thoughts around that. What else do you need to know to help you make that decision or have thoughts around it? We can also do that too. Go ahead, Sue.
Well, I think everything got so oversubscribed so quickly, right? That I don't even know if all of those ideas even fit the first pot of money they were aiming at. So it seems like if the application could be used in the new pot of money, the same application with maybe just a few updated questions, if you're not funded in transformational, at least you don't have to complete the entire. Maybe there's just like a supplemental application. You can use your original application and the supplemental, but if you're a new applicant to the process, maybe you have a different application.
I like that thinking. We'd have to run that by procurement folks, or maybe we just have you fill out the whole same application with the supplemental to make it fair. But I like your point of that's an interesting idea, Sue. Thank you. Other thoughts around that or questions? Andy, hey, Andy, go for it. Good to see you.
Hey guys. Well, obviously this is said with zero skin in the game, but it does seem like since 1, 2, 3 is more permissive than tag, like the timelines are less prescribed, that you could take whatever backlog there is from tag and fund it with 1, 2, 3 and avoid death by application. Just a thought.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Andy. I think one of the differences here on the transformational homelessness response NOFA compared to the TAG one, which stands for transformational affordable housing, is that is funding, the homelessness one is funding a lot of programmatic assistance, either rental assistance or staff that will then have a 2026 timeline where it stops funding it. And would those requests for ongoing programs or models look different if you knew that there wasn't that 2026 deadline? So I think you're right. It looks a little different on the development side with the pipeline. And there's a little nuance here on the homelessness programmatic side. But to your point, Andy, one of the eligible activities on the homelessness side is developing supportive housing. And so we do have through TAG requests for developing supportive housing. So we had not talked about that in the last group, so I appreciate you flagging it because we need to look at it from not just the programmatic side, but also the development side. So thank you for the reminder of that. And that's an important thought there, suggestion. Other questions, thoughts? One of the things, oh, Melissa, you were going to say something before. I don't know if it's applicable still or you want to say it, but go for it if you do.
I was just, to try to keep the conversation going, curious if folks have ideas or plans on what they already, looking at Prop 1, 2, 3, if there's any specific programs that you would be interested in applying for that you haven't already applied for through the other NOFAs that we have available. I'll take it that means all of them. Everything we've got.
Some other questions that came up in the last one were, how do we educate ourselves, get up to speed when we're thinking about homelessness? So love that question. We've been working really hard at the Office of Homeless Initiatives to help not just fund programs, but help give you the tools and information you need to actually implement those programs to be as effective as possible. And so we've spent a lot of time trying to do that in a digestible way. One of those is our Making Homelessness History Playbook, as I mentioned, and then we just created a program comparison model that will help you know what's the difference between shelter, transitional housing, bridge housing, rapid rehousing. It will help give you, just when we talk about models, what do we mean by those models? And when I say we, it's the homelessness world, right? But it's something for you to then have those conversations as an organization or a community of, this is what we're trying to do. This is where we see a gap. Okay, let's see what that model looks like and says. I think Zach just put the link in, so thank you. So I think those, again, those were our ways of trying to help you all. And it also informs you of this is the framework from which we look at things. So this is not us saying you must do it this way or we won't fund you, but it is the framework from which we work. So we're going to be wanting to understand how you're doing it to show that you are doing it in these best practice ways. And if not, why not? And so whether it's for Prop 123 or any of the funding, we really want to look for those best practices and help support you with that. So definitely recommend you look at that. I think there was is there a question in the chat? I'm looking at all your pretty faces that I'm not looking at the chat.
Wayne asked, will bridge housing vouchers be available under this program?
So great question, Wayne. So this is one of those nuances where it wouldn't be vouchers because we don't really pay for vouchers with temporary housing. Vouchers are something you get as rental assistance vouchers for your own place to live for rental assistance. So bridge housing is a temporary assistance. It provides temporary housing for someone who is looking to move into and secure that permanent housing option. So what we would look for in that bridge housing model that we feel that we could fund with Prop 123, the way we read it, by that sentence that says it can fund. I'm going to look at the wording exactly. And of course I can't find my mouse. Other homeless related activities contributing to the resolutions of homelessness per division of housing. So that is where we would say bridge housing, if done in the way implemented with the best practices, which you can look at the program model comparison document to understand that more, would be eligible per that line of homeless related activities relating to resolution per division of housing. So love that question, Wayne. Thank you. Would home sharing. Allison, do you mind coming offline and just explaining that a little bit more? I want to make sure I know what you mean by home sharing.
Hello, sorry, the internet is super unstable.
That's okay. I'm not sure when you say home sharing, can you tell me what you mean by that? I want to make sure I understand your
So
question.
yeah, so ours is older adults that have empty space in their homes and they are sharing that space. So it's existing housing stock, people that have rooms, helping them find a housemate, and then trading decreased rent for help with like yard work, snow shoveling, meal preparation to support aging in place and create affordable housing.
Zach, I saw your hand go up. Were you going to respond to that?
Yeah. So as far as compatibility with their rental subsidies, there's a couple relevant factors. So one is on our state housing vouchers, for example, do allowed for shared housing. And what that practically means is, right, if you have a 5-bedroom house and you want to rent out one of those bedrooms, the major factor, and it can be done in shared housing models with a voucher, so long as the owner is comfortable with how the unit breaks down based on our housing quality standards and where we send our rental payment standards. So what that practically means is if you're going to rent a 1-bedroom of a 5-bedroom house, you have to take the 5-bedroom payment standard and divide it by 5. So that oftentimes those numbers can be a little low. And so that's kind of the challenges with using a rental subsidy in that setting. The other piece that's also applicable here, and I know we're close on time, is around we are unable to do what are called side rental agreements. So we can't have agreements in addition to the rent agreement between the owner and the renter. And so that also is a factor for shared housing.